Today we're going to be talking about joints. This is a joint. So, we're going to be talking about the three major types of joints, the different types of joints within those groups of joints, and what type of joints they are. So, here in our fibrous, now this is our whatever. It's the one that doesn't move. They are fibrous type joints. They are sutures. That's what combines the skull plates in your skull. They are the gomphosis. Now these are just completely immobile joints. That's all they are. And then the syndesmosis is kind of the same thing, but it's got a little bit of wiggle room. Now we have our cartilaginous, right? This is our amphitrophosis joints. Now there's two types. There are the primary. Those are completely immobile hyaline cartilage, right? Those are growth plates. Those are the epilines or whatever are inside of your bones, right? And then we also have our secondary. Now these permit slight movement, like your pubis right here on the hip bone, right here where the pubis is. That is a secondary cartilaginous joint. And then we have our synovial, which are the most common type of joint in the entire body. Then we have plane, hinge, pivot, condylar, saddle, and ball and socket. A ball and socket, femur, and hip bone. Pretty straightforward, right? Then we have our saddle, which is basically when the two plates ride against each other like that. Your thumb is a very good example of a saddle joint. Now we have our condylar. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember which that one is. Pivot, very simple, a little pivot joint. If you can move your hand there, just this, right? Your ulnar pivots off of your humerus. Hinge, your fingers. That's a hinge joint. And then the plane, that's just when two things slide against each other, right? So your scapula in the back, or the anterior portion of one of your ribs and the anterior portion of one of your scapulas. Those slide against each other. And this is my dog Morty. Morty is ugly, but we love him. Ain't that right, Morty? Now Morty's gonna be my anatomical model to show you guys the different types of joints. So first thing we're gonna start off with is the typical hinge joint. Right here on his little paws, you can see I'm moving his little finger around. That is a hinge joint. Now Morty has arthritis because he's old. So it's not as smooth as it used to be, because guess what? There's not as much cartilage as there used to be. Now, we'll move up to his wrists. Right here, we have a saddle joint. Now, I know this is not anatomically correct, but for the dog it is. So, as you can see right here, we have a saddle joint. This rides, it couples in and rides the bottom of his humerus. And then, we have, did the TV shut off? A pivot joint. Now a pivot joint is a joint that can go in all directions, correct? Morty's head here can go in all directions. He chooses not to use it, but it can go in all directions. Then we have the plane joint. Morty has the prime example of having a scapula, or dog scapula, I don't know which one it would be called, but it's right here, and it slides across his ribs as he walks. As you can see, when he posts up like this, right here, in his chicken bone, he's got a scapula right here. Is that right, Morty? And that scapula, again, comes across, as you can feel right here. You can't see it, obviously, but right here, his scapula comes and slides across his ribs when he walks. This isn't working. 3, 2, 1, go. Now, Morty does not have a condylar joint. That's basically the human wrist joint. It goes in all directions except for in and out. Whatever. Now, what Morty does have... Hey, buddy. I know. Big hug. Hey, big hug. Morty has a ball and socket in his hip, too. All dogs do. Right here is where the socket, the hip comes into place. Right here. And then the ball falls right into the socket. Bada bang, bada boom, making his leg. And that leg does this, it has a full range of motion, in, out, side, side. Only thing it does is it can't collapse on itself. Now, we have Fibrous. Morty's got a hard head. He's an old man, right? What's holding that skull of his together? Sutures. Sutures are holding his skull together. And that is what makes this hard-headed old man sing. Now, we have Gomphosis, or Gomphosis, which are immovable ones. Basically the, let's see, joints that are immovable. Give me a second to remember what an immovable joint is. We'll skip it and come back. Syndesmosis joints. A great version of that is spinal joints. Every little thing, you have a joint in between every single one of your spinal vertebrae, but you have no movement over it, and it only moves a little bit to account for the rest of the body. Now, cartilaginous, we have primary, which are immovable. Basically, the cartilage that connects on Morty's true ribs here, that is a primary cartilaginous joint. And then a secondary, which would provide slight movement, would be Morty's pelvic muscle. Or not muscle, but his pelvic pubis right down. Sorry, camera died and the other dog jumped out of my hand. So as I was saying, the pubis of the dog is right down here, right on the pelvis, right? And that is our secondary. And then the best way to describe your gomphosis is your tooth, your teeth. They're socketed into your skull. That's a joint. Gracie has good chompers. Morty here, on the other hand, well, I'll let the camera do the talking. The gomphoses on Morty here are strangely unaligned, but basically the joint itself is the tooth and the rooting inside of the gums into the mandible. And that's our joints. Thank you for watching. And now we're going to talk about all the joints that I drew. As you can see, we have 6 synovial joints. We have the pivot joint, which can be found within the neck. The ball and socket joint, which can be found within the hips where the femur connects. The plane joint, which can be found within the tarsals of the foot. The condyloid joint, which can be found within the metatarsals and metacarpals of the hands and feet. The hinge, which can be found within the fingers. The hinge can be found within the elbow, and the saddle can be found within the fingers. Moving on from our synovial joints, we are moving to fibrous. Now, fibrous is 3. You have your gomphoses, your syndesmosis, and your sutures. Sutures are the fusing lines within the skull. As you can see, I have an example drawn here of the frontal, the right and left parietal bones are all fused together on these lines. Now, your gomphoses is basically the fusing of the tooth into the underlying gum layer. And then your syndesmosis is basically this specifically is an antebrachial antiosis membrane. But basically this membrane would stretch in between 2 bones, making them move, but they are connected and they are immovable. And then moving down to our cartilaginous joints, we have our syndechondrodrosis,
which is basically your epiphyseal lines and your hyaline cartilage in between all of your joints that make them move smoothly, as well as, in this example, for the symphyses, the pubis symphysis is a symphysis joint.